to forgive, even to redeem his people. Today we sang a couple of songs about redemption, redeeming, the redeeming love of God. And that's what Hosea does in the Old Testament, to show us in a living story, a living parable. It's kind of an analogy that people could look at and to understand and to say, wow, this is what the love of God looks like. What is God willing to do in order to make this relationship work to people that really don't care? And so this was Hosea's struggle. Chapter 1, we looked at last time, a lot of the things that he was going through. By the way, chapter 1 and 2, we're kind of told in the third person. It was kind of what God told Hosea to do. So just kind of a recap of last week in Hosea chapter 1, in verse 2. It says there, when the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to him, go take to yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry, and the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord. And so here he is, a young man marrying a woman that is not going to be faithful. And Hosea knew that, and God knew that. They had children, 3 children, that Hosea was left to take charge of and be responsible for, and to be a single father, as she was out with other men, gone for maybe weeks or months at a time. And all this is an illustration of the people of God and how they respond to his love and his commitment. And God is really, through Hosea, saying, I still love my people. I still want this relationship. And so Hosea was born and lived in the northern kingdom, and he preached in the northern kingdom to the people of Israel. And it's a story of love. But chapter 3 takes a little different approach. This is Hosea writing, first person. This is him writing, this is what I am to do, what I am going through. The Lord said to me, go show your love to your wife again. You know, the wife that was not even really faithful when you married her. And the wife, after all these months, maybe years, has been unfaithful to you. Don't give up on her. Don't forget about her. Don't think, oh, we can just move on. Don't just think, well, she's made her choices. She has consequences. He didn't even really say, Hosea, if ever she gets to the point where she wants to come home, then at least give it a thought. Try to be gentle. Try to be kind. When she makes the first move, isn't that what's supposed to happen? Go show your love to your wife again. Though she is, we would say, still loved by another man. Could you imagine? You're the prophet, you're the teacher, you're the local preacher. You got to walk through the town and you got to ask people, have you seen Gomer? Do you know where she's at? People may say, well, last I heard, she was living over at that guy's house. You may go to the guy's house. Well, she's not here anymore. She took off with somebody else. Got to keep looking through the city so he can find his wife, so he can bring her home. Think about how painful that is, how difficult, even how humiliating to have to go and find your wife. And is she going to come home? Is she ready? Is she finished with this lifestyle? Or am I going to be rejected again? God never said, go love your wife because she's so in love with you and she's so repentant and things are going to work out great. Can you kind of help me out finding those Old Testament scriptures where Israel did that to God? Go, yay, God, we've been waiting on you. This is wonderful. We're going to recommit. And very seldom happened. God always had to go after them, to seek them. Kind of like what Paul says in Romans 5. You remember, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He redeemed us. God didn't wait until we got better, till we got smarter, till we got stronger, till we got more righteous or more holy or more moral. He was reaching out to us even when we were as a Gomer. This is what God does in the Old Testament, in this beautiful picture of the love of God in the marriage relationship. So God says to Hosea, love her as the Lord loves the Israelites. So again, all the way through here, it's got to be the comparison between God and Israel and Hosea and Gomer. Though they turn to the other gods and love the sacred raisin cakes. Here are these people, they're just going with whatever feels good, whatever looks right, whatever everybody else is doing. They're following the society. And at this point, it looks like a lot of the society is filled with people of the Canaanite nations, worshiping the Baals and the Asherah and the gods that they invent and they create and they build and the shrines. God still loves the people, even though they've been so unfaithful to him. They've been allured in, they've been attracted, thinking, well, it's all these gods that must, fertility, the gods of the rain, the gods of health, the gods of the crops. We worship those because that's how we can have success in life. God over and over says, but I'm the one who created all this. I'm the one who makes the world go round. I'm the one who makes the rain. I'm the one who gives you life. God is the one through the Old Testament, opens and closes the womb. God is the one who does that. Why are you still going after all these other gods? It's interesting, he talks about the sacred raisin cakes. You ever had one of those? Now I'm thinking maybe it's just, you go to Tim Hortons, cinnamon raisin bagel toasted with butter, double large coffee, and you're good. But it's maybe more than like a lunch after you're done the worship. Some people think it may be filled with, hallucinatory drugs that you take in order to worship. So it's almost like saying, we're going to go to worship, but on your way in, hey, you guys got the little cup and stuff like that. You come to our church, we can give you a little bit of heroin, a little bit of LSD, a little bit of crack cocaine. Let's do that before we start worship. That's the thinking. There's more to this than just what we're serving at potluck. But in addition to that, a lot of people think it's also laced with something in the nature of, like today we would say, a heavy dose of Viagra. Something to be sexually stimulating. So pagan worship was not just, sitting down singing some songs and listening to a nice lesson. A lot of it involved temple prostitution. So today we would say, the whole group of people being involved in sexual immorality. I was thinking about how to tame that down for you. I was going to go wild on that one, but nope, we've got to keep this PG. It's pretty serious, though. This is what the people are involved in, and God's saying, I still love these people. I've not given up on these people. I know they've been unfaithful, but I want them to come home. I want them to be restored. So now Hosea is walking through the town looking for his wife. He finds her. Isn't that good news? He finds her. But where is she? It looks like she's kind of run down her life, this life of prostitution she had. I don't know exactly what what was like back then prostitution. Today, prostitution, for the most part, involves people selling their bodies, maybe because they think there's power, or maybe because they think there's satisfaction, that somebody wants them or loves them. Maybe it's for the money. But it doesn't take long before you realize this is not the way I want to live. This is very painful. I need something else. So today in prostitution, quite often they become drug addicts in order to forget about the pain and the abuse of prostitution. But once you get addicted, then what do? You got to support your habit. And you may not have a college education or even access to a job. So one trick leads to another trick. One trick is sexual, and one trick is substance abuse. And it just keeps going. And how do you get out of that? Except maybe by getting into a lot of debt. It looks like Gomer is a slave. And it looks like nobody really wants her. Hosea does. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and about a homer and a lek of barley. Don't know what all of that exactly means, but we do know in Exodus that a slave is sold for 30 shekels of silver. Now you know that. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? You remember Jesus was sold, betrayed by Judas for 30 pieces of silver? Even Jesus was sold as a slave, yet crucified as the Son of God. Well, apparently, Gomer was not even worth what a slave was worth. People weren't willing to pay the full price. But in addition to that, it looks like, just kind of reading through it, what does all this mean? Hosea was there to buy his wife. He told them, I want to buy her. And they said, well, how much are you willing to give? He says, all I have is 15 shekels. They may have said, that's not enough. He said, that's all I have. I have 15 shekels. You don't have 20? No, I don't have 20 shekels. That's all I have. Well, what else do you have? I got some barley. Well, how much? A homer and a half. That's a few bushels. Okay, well, we'll take all that. That's all we can get, but we'll take that. If that's the way it happened, what is it saying? Gomer gave everything for her. He had nothing left. My life savings, everything I own, anything that's valuable. I had to give it all away so I can get my wife back. It does follow the picture of God, doesn't it? How much God loved us and cared for us, willing to sacrifice everything. So this is what Hosea said to her. You are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or intimate with any man, and I will behave towards you in the same way. The same way. So in other words, what he's saying is, you spent the last months, years, maybe even most of your life selling yourself and being involved in illicit sexual relations. So you know what you need right now is a break from this. So he's saying, I'm not going to be intimate with you. You're not going to be intimate with me. I didn't bring you home so that you can be another sexual object and feeling that you've been degraded or taken advantage, or this is the only reason. He's saying, we're going to be celibate in this relationship. And that's the picture of Israel. It's the northern kingdom. The kingdom was destroyed. Individuals remained, but the nation itself of Israel, the northern kingdom, was never reassembled. It was all done in the southern kingdom, down in Judah, in Jerusalem, in Judea. It wasn't in the north. It wasn't in places like Samaria. So God said, we're going to have this time of separation. And this is what God says. He explains exactly what's going on here. It's just the next verse, if we look at that. Israel will live many days without the king, the prince, without sacrifice or sacred stones, without the ephod, and without the household gods. So Israel is to live celibate from the world, no idol worship, no Baals, no Asherah, none of this temple prostitution, none of that stuff. But there's also no temple, there's no sacrifices, there's no priests, there's no direction. You remember the ephods, the high priest would be able to determine God's direction. So Israel is going to be wandering. They're without direction. They're definitely going to be challenged for a while. But there is good news and there is hope. And we looked at that last time, that one day there is going to be a new kingdom, a new way that God is going to make. That's in chapter 1 at the very last verse. It's in chapter 2, but here in chapter 3. After this time, the Israelites will return and they will seek their God. And, listen, they're going to seek David, their king. So, David's been dead for a few generations now. They're going to follow David. Well, by the time we get to the New Testament, we see a new king of David, and that's Jesus. He was the king that took over from David, God's chosen servant that was going to lead the people, a man after God's own heart. The new David. These people are going to seek God through the new David. And they will come trembling to the Lord and to his blessing in the last days. David, last days, what does that sound like? Sounds like Acts chapter 2. You just have to read through it. Paul quotes Joel in saying, in the last days, God said, I'm going to pour out my spirit on all flesh. Oh, what does that mean? Acts chapter 2 is last days. Acts chapter 2, God says, I'm going to raise up a man according to David, the King David. Acts chapter 2 is the fulfillment of Hosea chapter 3. This is when, and what does Acts 2 say? You remember just before, when the people respond, what does Peter say? Let all of Israel know for certain that God has made Jesus both Lord and Christ. Let all of the house of Israel? That's who we're talking about here, Israel, the northern kingdom. Now, obviously that message was for the southern kingdom, the people of Judah as well, but all of Israel, everyone who's an Israelite. But this includes the northern tribe, who is actually called Israel. And they will come trembling to the Lord and to his blessing in the last days. So God is going to pour out life, relationship, renewal, a new covenant for the people as he brings them back. God is continuing to work, even as we read 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 18 and 19. Gives us the picture of worth. You know that it was not with perishable things like silver and gold that you were redeemed from your empty way of life. So, we could think about Hosea here. He paid with silver. But even if it was a lot of silver, maybe we would say there was thousands of shekels or hundreds of tons of silver and gold. I mean, God could have gotten all that together. God owns the earth. He could have mined all the earth to get all the silver and all the gold. And if he didn't have enough, he could have just created more. And say, I can redeem you with silver and gold. But that's not the redemption price. It's not with these things of the world. How are we going to be redeemed and brought back and reconciled from our empty way of life? Well, again, Hosea was bringing his wife back from her empty way of life. A way of life that was going nowhere. It was just full of pain and misery and sorrow. Maybe regret from very bad choices. Empty way of life. But how have we been redeemed? By the precious blood of Christ. Through the precious blood. We've been redeemed. Think about that. Through the precious blood of Christ. So we talked about Gomer. How do we know how much Gomer is worth? Well, we would say, how much is somebody willing to spend? Evidently, she wasn't worth a lot. She wasn't even worth the price of one slave, never mind, hire. She may think, well, I'm worth more than just one slave. I mean, look at me. Still kind of a young person, maybe an attractive woman. Maybe still could do a lot of work around the house and in the field, in the garden. But she's not worth that much. And I guess we'd say, Israel, when we really look at the terms of, from a worldly point of view, what did they have? Did they have a lot of intellect? A lot of power? Large numbers? Strong army? At this point, they didn't have any of that. What did they have? Not much. How much are they worth? In the world's eyes, not much. What about you? How much are you worth? What do you think somebody would pay for you? What if you got yourself into a difficult situation? You kind of think about that. Somebody gets thrown into jail and, maybe even, in order to get them out on bond or on bail, it's $1 million. Yeah, not worth $1 million to me, so I'm not paying that. I mean, it's not like the judge is going to go, whoa, what about $500,000? Would you do that? No, not doing that. I mean, it's not a barter deal, but still, how much are you willing to pay? I guess that kind of determines a little bit of value. It's kind of like artwork. I don't know, how much would someone be willing to pay for Da Vinci? Quite a bit. Now, if you put your child's or maybe your grandchild kindergarten artwork that they did, it's just still on your fridge. I wonder how much we can get for that out in the public marketplace. 10 cents, right? I mean, it's important to you, I know. I'm not trying to say anything. Just saying it's not really that valuable, except sentimental. So we come back, how much are you worth? So if God said, you are worth more than all the silver and the gold in the world, you'd say, I don't understand. How can I be so valuable? But God goes beyond that and he says, I'm going to give the best of heaven. I'm going to give all that I have for you. So I can buy you back. So I can, again, the word we use, the word we sing about, redeem. That's what Hosea was doing with Gomer, redeeming her back, paying a price so she could be free. Redeem. You are so valuable to God. He told his son, Jesus, you need to die for them. God didn't say, I don't think they're worth it. I don't think they're that kind and that loving. I don't think they're going to respond the way I hope they would respond. He said, I'm going to redeem you anyway. Think about the number of people that God has paid a price to redeem their soul. And you know what they say? I don't care. That doesn't mean anything to me. I still want to do my own thing. I don't even want to listen. Think that breaks God's heart? We don't know what happened with Gomer. We don't know what her response was after she had been home for this little while. Because sometimes it's just as easy to go back to that life that you know and that you're used to, and maybe the life your friends are involved in, and the life that your family grew up in, and it's just common. But God is calling us, inviting us, just like Hosea. God's coming. He's seeking us. He wants to find us. It's not like he doesn't know where we are, but he wants to be able to reach us, to touch us, touch our heart, touch our soul, so that we would respond. And to find the blessing that he wants. So this idea of redemption, as we close, think about this, the redemption. Now Isaiah talks about redemption. Jeremiah talks about redemption. The Old Testament is filled with these words of redemption. So the ransomed of the Lord will return and come with joyful shouting to Zion, and everlasting joy will be on their heads. They will obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. This is what redemption looks like. This is maybe what redemption would have been for Gomer. A new life, a new start, a new relationship, a new commitment. But the ransomed of the Lord. This sounds even greater than anything we would see on the earth. Part of this may be when we are living in this world under the covenant of Christ. Maybe it's within the church, or maybe it's speaking more of the eternal glory, almost as it's pictured in the book of Revelation, of being in heaven, where there's no more sorrow or tears or death or pain. That's all gone away. This is the story of life, the story of redemption, and that's why we sing these songs of redemption. In Psalms, it says, let the redeemed of the Lord say so. If you've been redeemed, you want to share that with somebody. You want to tell somebody what's happened in your life. So we're going to sing a song about redeemed. We are redeemed. We have the blessing of knowing how much God loves us and how much he wants and desires this relationship, even as it's pictured so graphically and sometimes a little bit uncomfortable in the book of Hosea, but it's just stating reality in ways that we can understand. A little shocking, but we read it and we can say, I understand a little bit more of what God's redeeming love looks like. If we can encourage you in your Christian walk, if you want to be a part of this relationship with God, being redeemed in Christ, if you want to surrender your life to the Lord, if you want to be baptized into Christ, if we can pray with you or we can encourage you, we're going to sing the song. Joe's going to come up and lead us, and perhaps afterwards you can let us know how we can help you.